Hiya, friends. So we're going to start to look at, we were in hips last week, right? And I want to still bring a connection that starts to connect your upper thigh bone all the way up to the low back, right? So we're moving the hips up into that kind of low back, and we're going to play with the solar plexus a little bit. The psoas. I know, I talk about a decent amount, but I think it's a really important muscle in our body, right? It connects to the inner thigh, and it comes up and it comes over, right? Through that intestinal wall, comes around, and it connects into the super amazing joint connection of your S1 and L5, your sacrum, the very top of the sacrum, the upside down triangular shaped bone. That's not a triangle at all, of the pelvis, right? The back of the pelvis, and your L5, which is your lowest lumbar vertebrae, where most of us feel low back pain. 80% of us do or will feel low back pain at some point in time. It's not always the psoas, but the psoas plays a big role in that, and also the tightness, the rounded shape of the upper back. So I think it's worth taking a moment to try to open the psoas. Open's not the word I want to use. To try to lengthen the psoas, which is tricky for so many reasons, and also to start to play with the strengthening of the corset, the transversus abdominus, and that solar plexus area, so that that's what supports our pelvis and allows us to get the length out of the psoas. So I like blocks, you know I love my props, right? I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna come into a lunge right off the bat. Actually, forgive me for a moment. I'm gonna get a blanket for my knee. Right? And then from there, right, come into your lunge as we often do, right ankle under right knee. But then I want you to curl your left toes under, and I want you to see if you can lengthen your left knee further back behind you without really moving that right knee back much, and set that back down and uncurl, right? Now, you can let it simply be this, but you know I don't love hanging in joints, right? I want to lengthen the psoas without activating that area a lot. But if I just really gently push into my blocks, pulling my solar plexus in and up, my pubic bone even, just gently. Again, don't be aggressive with these motions. Just a slight upward motion is going to do two things, right? It's going to pull, gently bring that pelvis up so that it lengthens that psoas even more. And it supports the low back here so that your low back does not take the brunt of this stretch, right? If you're feeling in your low back, stay further forward with the body. And again, I'm not really trying to add too much muscular action. I'm just letting that leg back, right, and up, so I lengthen that psoas. While we're here, we're going to be here for a couple more breaths. I want to add in part of the trickiness of the psoas is that it is one of the first muscles that its natural reaction to adrenaline being in the body is for that muscle to contract, to get you ready for fight, flight, or freeze. So we can stretch it as much as we want, and sometimes that's not going to give us length, because what we need to do is to re-regulate our nervous system, right? But we'll do what we can here in this short practice. Go ahead and move yourself back. We're just going to simply switch the legs out. I'm going to switch directions. I'm realizing my mic's, oh no, it's pretty centered. Never mind. Bring that left foot forward, and again, I have my left ankle under my knee-ish, something like that. I'm going to curl my right toes under. I'm going to push my heel back and try to lengthen out of that right hip where that hip flexor is. Set my knee down as far back as I can in my body. Uncurl the toes. And just pause for a moment there, right? And I'm going to stay a little lower right now and just let that psoas understand what's about to happen without trying to wrench on it. And then I'm going to add that little, just that bitty, I can't even talk right now. That little bit of strength, the front, the pubic bone, right, and the solar plexus. Just think about those areas just really gently pulling up, come into just a baby, like you're moving towards an upper back bend. I'm truly not even in an upper back bend right now, right? And I'm breathing, but my body is an extension. Again, I'm trying to keep my low back protected so it does not take the brunt of this. And I'm trying to just give a little support to that hip joint, even though I'm trying to stretch that big old Iliopsoas. Take another couple of breaths. Again, we're going to be here for a little bit. Let that nervous system know you are safe, you are sound, everything's okay. Letting go of anxiety, worries. That does more than you know for your physical body. It's incredible. go ahead and come on back, and to let go of that or to counter that, we're going to go into a child's pose for just a moment. Let the knees go wide, the big toes touch, and then go ahead and just bring your body on down, hips towards heels. If this is not comfortable, you could lay on your back, right, and hug the knees in. And I'm going to leave my head higher so that you can hear my voice better, but you could have your forehead down. And let's just take a couple of breaths here, maybe even let your hips just sway a little bit from right to left. And just feel the front of those hips out. How are they feeling? Okay, so come back up. Bring those blocks in. Step the right foot forward. And this time, don't move the knee back further. Come into what is our more traditional lunge that I often teach, right? And then inhale, bring those arms. Actually, put your hands on your thigh first. Push down. And again, I'm going to use that leverage to try to pull this frontal hip point up. And then I'm going to add a little traction action. Remember, when I say traction, nothing physically moves, it energetically moves. I pull my right heel back and my left knee forward, so I start to turn on some other muscles around this hip to stabilize. My psoas lengthens, right? Maybe I reach my arms out and up, soft shoulders, soft jaw, and think of that length coming all the way from, I like to think of it coming from my knee. This is not technical anatomy. I like to think of it coming through my knee, all the way through my frontal hip point, my front abdominal wall, through my chest, my armpit, up through my middle finger, my pinky finger. Take another breath there. Bring that hand down. Bring those hands. I'm not even going to go back and try to refilm this. It's that day. I've already tried to refilm a couple of things because I'm flubbing words all over. Left foot forward and come forward. Y'all are just going to get that part of me today. And again, before I come all the way up, lengthen the spine. I don't move the knee back for this particular one. I'm going to bring my hands onto my thighs, and with the intention, right, as I push down here, I'm not just throwing my shoulders back. I'm pulling my frontal hip points up. Traction action. Pull your left heel back and your right knee forward so that you neutralize the pelvis, stabilize, tone the hips, and then we start to stretch that psoas, potentially on a deeper level. Maybe you reach those arms out and up, soft shoulders, soft jaw, and tongue. And again, imagine, if you will, that stretch is coming from the front of your right knee all the way up through that front body, through the armpit, the arm, through the pinky finger. Take another breath. And bring those hands, both of them, down. Step that left foot back. Now move the blocks off to the side. We'll do one more thing on our knees, and then we'll get off the knees here. I want you to go ahead, and I want you to reach the right heel back. Keep the toes on the earth for a second, lengthen the spine, and then lift that leg up. Yeah? Now we're working towards stabilization of the pelvis and the low back. So don't let the ribs drop down or the belly drop down, right? But also try not to round the upper back up. Try not to look back at the left knee. So the longest spine you ever did, fine. I find pushing through the heel helps most bodies find more length, right? Because we need a little more on the back side, especially by the low back, and that helps that action. Now, stretch your left arms forward, but keep your fingertips on the ground for a second. Humor me here. With your fingertips on the ground, I want you to push down into your finger pads. Feel the hugging of the left shoulder and the stabilizing, right? Push your left shin and your right hand down. Tone the abdomen gently. I didn't say push it up, right? Tone it gently up. And then that left arm is going to lift up potentially. Fingertips can totally stay on the ground. But really pay attention to the midline here, to your spine. If you lose it, it's not worth lifting a limb. It just isn't. I'm 100% in belief of that. Sorry, I'm very strong belief about that. I watch people who lift things up and they're just re-amplifying a pattern that's already in there. That's not helping, right, with the psoas length and or the strength of the abdomen. Bring that down. Now, reach your right foot behind you, but keep your toes curled under this time. Move your toes over to the right, to the left, to the left, to the left, left, left. Go ahead and look over your left shoulder and lengthen through that right side body. Yeah? And hopefully you're feeling it particularly. You may feel it in other places too. The piece I'm most interested in is right at the right outer hip area, right? And then go ahead and curl, I should be more specific, the top rim of the pelvis on the right side. Go ahead and curl your right toes under, push the heel back, the right heel back, and see if that changes the experience. If you don't like it, you don't do it. Even here, my belly wants to drop down. I keep my belly and my ribs gently pulled in. And then I'm going to bring that back to center. Now, Left leg straightens, the toes are curled under, right? And I'm gonna work on lengthening that leg for a second before I even think about lifting it. And then as I lift the left leg, hopefully my hips don't move over to the right? I don't drop my belly or my ribs down. Slide your right fingertips forward, stay on the earth for a second, humor me. Push down into your finger pads and feel that right shoulder fire up. All these muscles hug in to protect it, right? To keep it strong. And then from there, you might leave the hand there, you might lift it up. But I'll say it again, if when you lift it up, all the weight shifts to the right, if the belly drops down, if the upper back rounds and you're looking back at your knee, and you can't find that what I call the neutral spine here, it's not worth lifting both limbs, right? It really isn't. And take one more breath. And then go ahead and bring that all the way down. We're gonna reach the left leg back, but this time we're on our toenails, pointed toe. Left foot slides over, and you're gonna look over that right shoulder towards your left toes. And just, notice, where do you feel this in the left side body? I notice my ribs dropping, so I'm gonna gently tone my ribs up a little bit so I have a neutral spine in that way, right? Yeah, I'm going into a lateral stretch, but I'm not going into flexion or extension, if that makes sense. Now curl your left toes under, push the left heel back at that angle, and see if and how that changes the experience for you. So we're not directly in the psoas necessarily, but we are around it. You might be feeling a little bit of it, and you might be feeling that abdominal wall stretch. Come on back to center, bring that knee down. We're gonna move the prop if we're on a prop, and we're gonna come all the way down onto our backs. You know me, I love using core line on the way down, and have a block, because you're gonna wanna block once you get down. Well, I don't know if you're gonna want it, but I'm gonna ask you to use it. Go ahead and come on down. The blocks don't make things easier, peeps. Every once in a while I have someone who believes that and they don't want to use them because they want to be a true yogi. So from there, you're going to go ahead and you're going to bring that block and put it in between your thighs. Put it pretty close to your pubic bone, so I go out into Baddha Konasana to get that down and in there, right? And then I want you to put your hands on your thighs. And we're going to start with just a really simple stretch to begin with, right? So with my hands on my thighs, I'm going to push my thighs forward. I'm going to try to keep my shoulders as soft as I can. That's just keep your eye on it cue, right? And then from there, as I push forward, I'm just going to notice I'm getting a little bit of a low back arch. If it hurts, don't push so hard. I'm getting a diaphragm stretch. One of the other interesting things about the psoas is it connects, right, where it connects on your lumbar spine, the first few vertebrae, and that L5, S1. Well, those are the same insertion points of the diaphragm and some of the muscles in the upper body. So you can imagine that if the psoas is constantly pulling it down, right, you can really screw with these other muscle groups as well and what they're structurally supposed to do in the body. So we're stretching the diaphragm right now. Okay, release that pressure. Now, move into the block gently. I like to remind you, it's not Suzanne Summers' Thigh Master, right? As you move in, you're going to tone that belly. Naturally, that's probably already happening from the movement in. Put your hands on your thighs one more time, except this is slightly different. I do not change my low back position or my pelvis, and I'm going to do a push-pull action, an isometric action. As my thighs push back into my hands push forward into my thighs. And if you didn't know your transversus abdominis, now hopefully you're really feeling that turning on. So keep that action, just let it be just that simple this first round, right? I'm pushing and pulling my thighs. I'm not lifting my hips. I'm not changing my low back position. I'm not lifting my feet or pushing into my feet. And go ahead and release that. Okay, leave the block in, just release the pressure with the hands. So now I want you to bring your arms down by your side, grab the edges of your mat, right? And I want you to imagine that you're doing the push-pull. Even though your hands aren't there, push your thighs forward with your imaginary hands, your thighs pull back into them. Find that TA, AKA I'm gonna call it corset from now on. Go ahead and now bring your legs up into tabletop position and pause. Move into the block, right, gently. Push-pull with the imaginary hands on your thighs. And now with your actual hands, I want you to push your mat forward just enough that you keep that low back in its natural curve and long, right? And just notice what it takes to do that. And then try to release the hands, but maintain that same muscular action that might have turned on to help you with that. Now reach your heels up to the sky, still moving into the block. I'm a little wider than hip distance. That's okay. The block is causing that. Right? I'm still push-pulling with my imaginary hands on my thighs. I'm pushing my heels up, and I'm pushing my thighs forward so that I keep the length in my low back here. Now go ahead and bring those feet all the way down. Go ahead and remove the block. Put the block off to the side. We're trying to get a whole bunch of other muscles to recruit so that when we go into some of these exercises, it's not just the psoas trying to do everything, right? The psoas gets really overdeveloped on many of us. So me particularly, it tries to do all my core work. It took me years to change that pattern. So imagine the block, right? Move into your block. Imagine your hands on your thighs, push, pull. You can put them there for a second if that helps you find it. There is nothing wrong with that anytime. Imagine that your hands have your mat and they're pulling the mat forward, so you keep that low back long, and then reach those heels up to the sky. Now glue your legs together, right? Your feet, the ball mounds of the big toes, heels can be a little separate. And we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do this, what I think is incredibly powerful exercise 2 times, right? So we're gonna stop 3 times on the way, and I don't want you to go to the floor. That's not the objective, right? So drop down just a couple of inches, but notice that the low back wants to move up to the sky. The belly might want to dome up as well, or distend, I call it, right? And the psoas might be like gripping like crazy. The psoas have got to work. There's no way around it. But what else can you recruit to support this action? And then you're gonna drop the heels down a couple more inches. Really push your heels out and lengthen those legs as much as you can, and soften the shoulders and the jaw. One more stop along the way, wherever that is for you, but do not let your pelvis and your low back change no matter what. You can hear it, I can barely talk. And bring those knees into the chest. Hands on the knees, go ahead and rock from side to side. We got one more of those, and then that's pretty much the end of our practice, right? So go ahead and push those heels up. Now, one more challenge, if it's right for you, and only if you can keep your structural integrity, we're gonna call it, right? So my heels push up, my thighs and my hands push together, imaginary or not. My thighs move forward to lengthen my low back. I can grab my mat to find that. That helped us find it, right? And I can either keep grabbing onto the mat, I can just turn my palms down, or I might reach my arms overhead. If your low floating ribs just came off the ground, soften them down, and if you can't, do not reach your arms overhead. Drop your heels to that first stop. Keep reaching the fingers back, but keep reaching your buttocks bones forward. Keep that low back in its natural curve. Do not overcurve it. And drop down to the second place. Push through your heels now. Lengthen out, lengthen out. Think of the psoas getting longer, not contracting in. And then go down to that third spot and get as long as you possibly can through your whole body. And bring those knees in. And maybe rock from side to side. Tee the arms out, let the legs come over to the right. Of course, if you'd rather do thread the needle, you're welcome to do, not thread the needle, sorry, windshield wiper. And inhale back up, let the knees move over to the left, maybe turning the head to the right. Feel free to do windshield wiper instead. Come back up. Now, if you want to extend your legs all the way out, you can, but here's what I'm going to suggest. I'm going to suggest that you can do constructive rust pose, where I have my feet on my mat and I walk my feet out about as wide as my mat and lean my knees in. And here's why. When your legs extend, if you do have a tight psoas, you cannot help it. Anatomically, that psoas is pulling on your lumbar, the L5-S1, and even the lumbar up to the thoracic spine, right? Because that's where it inserts, where it connects. So since it's a psoas kind of a day, I'm going to suggest here, with the knees bent, we release that pull of the psoas on the vertebrae. Close the eyes. You could also put a bolster underneath your knees. And that's the happy medium. And take a couple of moments tuning into that area, a couple areas. One, the front of the hips, where we were playing with the psoas and bringing knowledge there, right, awareness. And then that corset that runs around the body to support. And we didn't go into it a ton, but we were moving up towards some of that solar plexus muscularity as well to stabilize. Although we were using muscles, I just didn't point it out a ton, so I didn't bring your awareness there. Now, if you can stay here longer, please do. If you're on a time commitment, any kind of stretches or movements or twists. She says, Theon, pandiculation. I like to moan and groan and sigh and snort, evidently. And you can push that floor away when you're ready and come on up. We will not be here for long at all, but find a nice tall spine. And then, you know, I talk about it, but I haven't talked about it a ton. When we sit on the earth and when we don't have a boost underneath us, our knees are higher than our hips. Don't care who you are, anatomically, the psoas is contracting to try to keep your pelvis in an upright posture. So if you have a tight psoas, and almost all of us do, by the way, just simply bringing yourself up where your hips are slightly higher than your knees. In my personal practice, I come up even higher when I do cross-legged, right? So that my hips are really up above my knees, so that I find that freedom and that length, and I don't put so much pressure on those muscles. Bring those hands together in front of the chest. Inhale. Exhale, bow your head in, taking just a moment of gratitude for these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful bodies, and that you showed up again today for that beautiful body. Namaste, friends. Be well.